What screams this person is insecure without them saying a word? Story 1. A coworker of mine suddenly started parking his car a couple blocks away from the office. I found out later that it's because his truck was in the repair shop and his insurance only gave him a small sedan as a rental. Story 2. People who perceive quiet people as arrogant or stuck up. If someone not interacting with you causes you to believe that the person must think they're better than you, then you have self-esteem issues. Story 3. Someone who perceives neutral statements as attacks/criticism and becomes defensive. Someone who is unable to reflect about their own behavior because it threatens their identity and ego. Story 4. Seeking constant validation from social media. Story 5. Trying to crush your hand during a handshake. Story 6. The girlfriend of my male coworker friend would physically put herself between the two of us. If I happened to be chatting in a circle of friends, there's girlfriend relocating and shoving her way between our line of sight. And if we were at dinner, when I would visit the restroom, she would move and sit in my seat. All of this took place in a larger group of friends who saw it as well. And not to mention, I was usually sitting next to my sweet, smart, funny smoke show of a husband. I learned that she didn't just do this with me, but even his female cousins. When they broke up, she ended up moving next door to him and getting married within a few months. Story 7. People who constantly have to be in a relationship and just jump to another person immediately after a breakup. Story 8. Social media is full of lifestyle pictures, one watch after another, luxury sports cars, probably rentals, and motivational quotes. Upon further review, if their feed is dominated by motivational quotes, they're working through some stuff 99.8% guaranteed. Story 9. Copying every facet of someone else. If you have to try and morph into someone to have a sense of self, you have issues. Get your own clothes, hairstyle, makeup, and wedding details. Story 10. Not making room on sidewalks or when passing others in public. Generally, it's the guys that have no social awareness or any behavioral etiquette and want to take up a lot of space on purpose. Story 11. Really loud mufflers on cars, trucks, and motorcycles that they rev up as much as possible. Story 12. As a former insecure person, wearing hats all the time to cover my balding. I eventually embraced it and now look slick with or without a hat. It's just hard sometimes losing hair. Story 13. The more they post themselves or their lives on social media, the more insecure they are in my opinion. I'm not talking about people who share their craft, work, or hobby. Story 14. Can't take a joke or any mild feedback. Everything's a personal attack. Feels like walking on eggshells around them. Story 15. In the workplace. Copying everything you do instead of finding their own identity. Wearing your identity to make them look like they know what they're doing because you have a good reputation. It just makes one look so insecure in the person that they are. Story 16. Insecurity isn't loud. It leaks. It shows up in defensiveness, comparison, and the need to be seen instead of understood. Story 17. They never turn on two-factor authentication. Story 18. Men who forbid their girlfriends/wives from having male doctors, especially male OBGYNs. Several years ago, when I was pregnant, I was in a baby center group, and some of the women were talking about how their husbands/partners wouldn't allow them to see a male OBGYN. One woman's husband threatened to leave her if she didn't go to another hospital to have a baby while a female doctor was attending. She went into labor, and her OBGYN was not on call that night and couldn't be there. She was in active labor, and her husband was telling her to pack up her stuff and switch hospitals. She refused. He left her there with the newborn. I've seen similar stories on Reddit. Ladies, those men are controlling and abusive. You can do better. Story 19. I once worked with a guy who never said much about himself, but you could tell he was insecure without him ever admitting it. Whenever someone else spoke in meetings, he'd lean back in his chair, arms crossed, nodding exaggeratedly, as if to say, I already knew that. If the manager praised someone, his jaw would tighten for just a second. Not enough for anyone to call it out, but enough to notice if you were paying attention. He dressed impeccably, always branded shoes, always the newest phone placed face up on the table, but he checked it constantly, even when it didn't buzz, almost like he needed proof that someone, somewhere, needed him. The most telling moment was during lunch. When conversations drifted to achievements or future plans, he'd suddenly get quieter. He'd smile, but it never reached his eyes. A few minutes later, he'd interrupt with a subtle put-down disguised as humor. People laughed awkwardly and moved on. He never talked about his fears. He never complained. He never asked for help. But everything about him said the same thing. Please don't see through me. That's what insecurity often looks like in real life. Not tears, not confession, just small, silent signals scattered through everyday behavior. Story 20. Actively discouraging someone's goals. Not, it'll be hard, it's a long shot, or that's a bad idea, don't do it. Straight up saying, don't bother, you can't do it. I've never had anyone straight up tell me I was incapable of doing something that wasn't coming from a place of insecurity. Story 21. Name brand luxury clothes, accessories, etc. I never assume so quickly that someone has a small ween or isn't actually wealthy as when I see someone wearing a Gucci shirt and those dumb glasses. Story 22. People who punch down, are rude or disrespectful to service people, and who talk negatively about other people. Story 23. People who drive up to you bumper to bumper. How dare you be in their way? Story 24. Acting superior, but getting weirdly defensive over tiny things. Confidence doesn't panic that quick. Story 25. Ridiculously loud exhausts. Bonus points if it's either A, attached to a 2002 Honda that probably maxes out at 60 miles per hour, or B, a truck that's never driven through a mud puddle, much less gone off-roading. Story 26. 60 to 70-year-old men with shoe-polished black hair. Men always wearing caps. Trying to crush your hand during a handshake. Someone constantly tugging at their shirt. Shirtless selfies as a profile picture. Story 27. I've posted this answer before, so some might have already seen it. For those in their teens and 20s, recording every second of your lives and posting it online as Day in My Life, Get Ready With Me, Corporate Girly, or My 5 to 9 after 9 to 5. It's a desperate cry for approval if you're taking the time to set up your camera positions every few minutes while filming yourself doing the most basic tasks that any human does on a daily basis. Getting dressed, making your bed, brushing your teeth, putting on your shoes, eating breakfast, getting in your car, starting your engine, commuting to work, and tapping keys on a laptop to look productive. You're essentially telling people, I have nothing actually useful to provide to society. So I'm just going to record myself doing literally things that are the equivalent of breathing to make myself feel like I exist. Please notice me. Pretty please. Story 28. Supporting a douchebag that wants to take from others to feed their superiority complex. Instead of understanding, a rising tide lifts all boats. Story 29. Those people who treat their partners like garbage and stay in relationships with people they clearly don't even like or respect. They are constantly arguing with them, making petty comments about them, and just generally don't even like them. It happens to both men and women, but at 1000% screams, I have no self-respect and I'm terrified of being alone. This applies to both people in relationships like this. The one who is being treated like garbage, and the one who is allowing themselves to be. Story 30. The need to point out a flaw in someone else the moment that person gets a compliment. If someone else says, she's so smart, and the insecure person immediately says, yeah, but she has no common sense. And that's it for today's video. If you stayed till the end and you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, leave a comment and tell me how I can make the next video better. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.